What's up gamers, Dreamcastguy here, talking today about the best and worst games of the last decade, because we are now just a single month away from 2020, meaning that we can really kind of look back at all the really good games that have come out, blown our minds, sold millions of copies and been huge successes, and also kind of see the really abysmal failures, the games that came out in the 2010s and downright sucked. So what I decided to do today is I woke up this morning and I just went through my huge collection here on the wall and I pulled out a bunch of stuff that to me really kind of exemplifies how interesting that this decade has been. There has been a bunch of stuff that has been exceedingly fun and also things that definitely earned our ire. Projects that were just catastrophic flops. And I want to talk about them today just for fun. Now real quick, I do want to apologize. There has been less videos this week on the channel because I've been spending time with family and just kind of relaxing. Here in America, this is obviously Thanksgiving. It's a time for just trying to relax, eat food, and enjoy our friends. And so I've been doing a bunch of that. Thank you everybody for being understanding in my temporary absence. But with that out of the way, let's start off by talking about some games that seemed so cool at the start and ended up sucking. Now, I am a huge fan of horror, scares, gory, crazy action. I love that kind of stuff, which is why I was absolutely in love with Dead Space. When this series popped on the scene, it was crazy to me because it felt like almost a clinical approach to scares. It was almost scientific in the ways that it was trying to freak you out. The way that they made the monsters so gory and just so creepy in every single twitch of their torsos. That was fantastic. Dead Space 2 really kind of exploded this idea, making it even bigger and, in my opinion, gory in the right ways. And then, unfortunately, in 2013, we got Dead Space 3. Now, I still don't want to completely say that this game is a dumpster fire. It's more just a huge disappointment. Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2 were just so freaking expertly constructed. You could just put those things up on a blackboard and just teach it as a lesson. Whereas this game had forced co-op, it had microtransactions, and the worst part of all, it just wasn't scary. It completely ignored the idea of what makes Dead Space actually Dead Space. Which is funny because let's talk about something on the other side of the coin. A game that really managed to be a huge success, being one of the best-selling games ever, just because it kind of did what it already did already, but a little bit better. Skyrim. Now, the Elder Scrolls series had existed for long before this, decades in fact, but it's really interesting to see what Skyrim did right. It was always fun. I mean, this is one of those games that really managed to get to mainstream appeal and, in my opinion, changed the trajectory of gaming. A lot of stuff before it had managed to have fantasy and dragons and stuff, but it was really the first time that I noticed a bunch of people who typically didn't play video games at all actually excited for a video game. They were really sitting down and saying, okay, what is the Dragonborn? Okay, let's just Fusro die, just blow people apart. Oh, this is what my spells are. It was cool to watch a game that could become so approachable. It also, to me, was a good introduction to the modding scene. A lot of us who really weren't experienced with the idea of trying to install add-ons or actually tinkering with the code of a game, Skyrim was a great start for that. It really kind of showed people, hey, games are good, but you, if you're dedicated enough, can make them even better. I like that kind of stuff. It was really, really interesting to me, but now I want to talk about something that's going to be a little bit more controversial, which is there's a game that only came out a couple of years ago now, and it's still being talked about in certain circles, which is certainly Final Fantasy 15. I have so much emotional attachment to this game. Okay, it had a lot of problems at the start. It had some crazy plot holes. They ended up making a multiplayer expansion. The season pass was basically doubled and then cut in half and then canceled, so there was just a bunch of episodes. But I played hundreds and hundreds of hours of this. And something I've seen a lot of people say is that this could be one of the worst games in the series, or certainly one of the worst games of the decade. People say this a lot, and I think it's because a lot of people, you may not remember Final Fantasy Fantasy 13, which is more than 10 years old now. So Final Fantasy 13 obviously is in this video, but Final Fantasy 15, it became one of these weird benchmarks of a game of it was released, rushed, and patched later. It was one of the first real big topical things I saw where people were talking about this is what happens when you just force developers to release a game even when they are telling you it is incomplete. Over time, by playing all the DLC and stuff, this became a pretty fantastic story. It also included like monster trucks and stuff. But to me, it's now one of those weird things that unfortunately is living in time as a project that's just so conflicted. It wants to be great, and it's not. What's funny is I actually like this game so much, I bought multiple copies of it. I own the collector's editions. I've watched the movie. I watched the Final Fantasy 15 anime. And even still, it doesn't really compare to the other Final Fantasies, which are all huge leaps above it. But I still want to acknowledge the fact that it was disappointing in the right ways. They were definitely trying. Now let me pull one off the good list. Alan freaking Wake. All day, I will still say that this is easily one of the best games of the 2010s. Maybe you never tried it. You absolutely should have. Alan Wake is a tactical shooter in a way. How do you explain it? It is like a survival horror over-the-shoulder combat game, but the weird interesting twist to it is that light and batteries are just as important in combat as the bullets in your gun. You have to actually shine your flashlight to get the darkness off the bad guys and then blast them with a headshot to take them down. It made it where you were kind of dual wielding in a way, but more than that, I've always liked the story of Alan Wake. There's something about this cool Stephen King-esque author who's been pulled into his own madness. The creations that he managed to terrify the most people with are now terrifying him the most. I think that is so freaking smart. There's been so many games this freaking decade that I really, really loved. And that's kind of what I like about this is that you really can't lose. I mean, even looking back on the 3DS, I've made some videos saying that I'm tired of the 3DS because obviously it's about to be 2020. The 3DS is long freaking dead. I think that definitely Nintendo released games for it longer than they should have. But I still gotta say, one of my favorite 3DS games, and one that I'm definitely glad they made, was Super Mario 3D Land. It's 2D, it's kind of 3D because it used like the 3D effects, but it was so fun. Okay, yeah, I'll admit it, it's probably the easiest Mario ever made, but I like it because it was just so bright and colorful and had fun costumes. It was a game that managed to be a port in a way because it was sort of just like a spin-off of Super Mario 3D World, but really kind of transcends the tiny bounds of it. Now, a question I see a lot, and I think it's definitely one of the most interesting questions of our time, is when people ask what modern game might become a classic. What is it that people are playing today that is probably going to be talked about for decades to come? And when I think of that, I definitely immediately imagine The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, this is quite contemporary. It is much of a game that just came out. It's still, I guess it's like 2 years old now, but the thing is, people are still playing it. People are still digging into the downloadable content. People are, to this day, buying Switches and saying, what is the #1 game I have to purchase? And everybody is saying The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. In my mind, I occasionally go back and forth over loving Ocarina of Time more than this, or Breath of the Wild more, but I think that all of us can agree that it is a very big and very, very fun game. You're going to get struck by lightning, you're going to randomly find Korok seeds, and you're certainly going to be breaking a lot of weapons during the adventure, but to me, that's what's great about it. I like Breath of the Wild a lot, and it's partially because it is just one of those games that really is going to stand the test of time. We're going to be playing that for a very long time, and even if there ends up being like a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro, I guarantee you that the first thing they're going to show is a tech demo of a souped up version of this. The same way that they put Skyrim on everything and made like a Skyrim special edition, they're probably going to be doing that with Breath of the Wild, and I can't really blame them. Now let's go back to the naughty list and talk about Evolve. This video is random, it's just the random games that come to mind. Evolve came out just what, I guess 5 years ago now? 4 years ago? And it's hard to even think about it because it failed so fast. The idea behind it was sort of like a monsterized version of Left 4 Dead with one giant beastie who's slowly getting stronger and everybody has to try and kill it before it manages to get max power and eat everybody. It seemed so great, but it had so much cosmetic BS that was trying to sell you skins and different character classes and weapons and so much needless stuff that a lot of people who ended up buying it at the very start almost immediately quit. The servers became ghost towns, and it became a very interesting lesson on how you gotta talk about your game correctly. Bad marketing can kill a game even if it is half decent. So here's a game that definitely deserves hate. I despise Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. This is easily one of the worst games in the last 10 years. I despise this game because I paid $60 for this day one. Every trailer, every interview kept saying, this is basically like a first-person shooter version of Resident Evil 2. You can actually play through the story, exploring the streets of Raccoon City as a good guy or as a bad guy. Let me tell you, that ain't right. This is a stupid, crappy shooter that has everybody is like wearing vests that make them practically immune to zombies. It takes the freaking horror out of a horror franchise. And to this day, I definitely think it's one of those games I'm glad it bombed because it does not deserve a single penny. Okay, so this video is accidentally going a little bit long because I'm just having so much fun with this, but I really want to talk about 4 more games on the good list and a couple more on the bad list. Let's dig into one that I think will certainly get me some a little bit of angry comments. Screw Star Fox Zero. Yeah, I said it. Star Fox Zero sold badly, and it probably ended up tanking Star Fox for a long time to come. That's part of the reason we got the Star Fox Starlink thing, is because Nintendo is probably currently a little bit afraid of making more Star Fox. Star Fox Zero is not a complete dumpster fire. I think graphically it's really cool. I think a lot of stuff about the story, the sound design, so much of this manages to check the boxes that really matter. The issues definitely arise when it comes down to the fact that it is so heavily reliant on motion controls. This game requires you waggle around your entire gamepad to aim while using the joysticks to aim the console itself, or to aim your ship. It's a system that I hated because it was so badly implemented. You know what? There are games that have weird control schemes, but when you adapt to them, they totally make sense. I've played fighting games that required you to hold certain buttons while doing combos and to block at appropriate levels. And once you manage to get used to it, you can really kind of appreciate the innovation that they're trying to implement. Star Fox Zero, though, is a big step in the wrong direction. It is trying to change up a formula that should not be changed. Now let's talk about some good ones. I want to hammer through a couple here right here that I really have a giant place in my heart. Minecraft, baby. Yes, I actually own every version of Minecraft now, I think. I own it on 360. I own it on PlayStation 3. I have it on PlayStation 4. I definitely have it on Switch. And I have it on PlayStation Vita. It's a game that you could play forever. I actually see a lot of people saying, I'm never going to stop playing Minecraft, because to them, it's more than just crafting. It's more than just tinkering around and experimenting. They use giant community servers to make friends and hang out. I mean, it is a digital playground that has pretty much no end in sight. It's kind of funny that this has now become one of the biggest games of all time, because it started off as a little early access indie project. 2011 this came out. It's weird to think that it's already been 9 years since this was released, and it just keeps somehow getting even better. On the other hand, though, we got to talk about a game that came out that's, a mainstream AAA project, unlike Minecraft, but for some reason, people go back and forth. Some people love it, some people randomly hate it, and that's always kind of blown my mind. The Last of Us. Now, again, I think that there's a lot of very good PlayStation 4 games. Bloodborne definitely comes to mind as well. I'm a huge Dark Souls fanatic. Bloodborne manages to have tactical combat, cool bosses. It does a lot of stuff right. But when I think of the PlayStation brand right now, I definitely immediately imagine The Last of Us. The Last of Us is not just like a gritty, moving drama. It's not just about the fantastic acting and the really harsh realities that they managed to establish. To me, it manages to have that real interesting touch where it feels like more than a game. When you're playing it, when you're seeing these characters really face their worst day ever, you're right there alongside them. Which is why it's bizarre to me when I see people be like, it's just a movie. It's a movie with puzzles in it. It's more than that. And I honestly think that it's one of those games that's going to be sticking around for a long time, talked about and analyzed, and maybe even put in museums. Unlike Aliens Colonial Marines. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. So Alien Colonial Marines is something that led to lawsuits, defamation, people talking about this being one of the biggest lies in gaming. It had incredibly alluring trailers, showing monsters climbing through the vents, aliens popping down and eating people, and, well, some really interesting added lore to the existing Alien universe, and none of it was real. This game was so broken, there were tons of montages in the early YouTube days when people are first kind of learning the ropes of uploading gameplay and stuff. There were loads of montages of the aliens walking against walls, not really properly bouncing out of the ceiling. I mean, this was such a travesty that everybody involved with this actually got charged millions of dollars in court. Sega was sued as lying about this game. False advertising. This is one of the only times I've seen a successful false advertising case in a video game, and it actually led to new laws about what you're allowed to show in video games. There are now real laws that exist that basically say that what's in a trailer must actually appear somewhere in the game, even if it's just for a second. Alright, so here's the last game that I really wanted to talk about, and this is just for fun. Fallout New Vegas. Obviously, Fallout used to be like a giant pinnacle series, and recently has kind of gotten worse and worse. People used to love it, and now, not so much. Fallout 3 was great, Fallout New Vegas was a masterpiece, Fallout 4 had a little bit more of a mixed reception, critics loved it, well, and the randos not so much. People on the internet who are, in my opinion, the Fallout mega fans, they weren't really inspired by what Fallout 4 was, and then of course Fallout 76. Well, I don't need to tell you about Fallout 76. Fallout New Vegas, though, was interesting because this was made by the original creators. These are the people that actually invented Fallout back in the day. They had permission to come back and do another game, and what they made is really, really interesting, especially all the DLC and stuff. It's a first-person shooter RPG with great music, really quirky writing, so much great chosen dialogue options, so many different things you could do with your character that to this day kind of blows my mind. I honestly wish we had this on PlayStation 4 really, really fast. Put this on Switch, put this everywhere so we can all play it. Okay, well, this has just been my random off-the-cuff thoughts of a bunch of great games that I really, really loved from the last decade, and a couple that definitely earned my hate. What do you think, though? What are some games that you've been playing that you really, really dug over the course of the last 10 years, and what are you hyped about over the next 10 years? Who knows what could be coming next? Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Alright, it's Thanksgiving time. I'm gonna go eat. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.